roots. When they say exact roots, that means that we can leave our answer with the square roots. We don't have to approximate it as a decimal. When they ask for decimal answers, then whatever's under the square root, we need to approximate with our calculator to a decimal. Also, the answers in these sheets are going to give you answers with fractions. I don't care if your answers are in the fractional form or with the decimal form. If you want to check to see if your answers are right with the answers and the answer's a fraction, take the fraction, do the division, see if the decimals match up. Okay? So first off, we need to understand what our answer is going to look like. If they say exact roots, then we get to keep the square root bars. We don't have to change them to the decimal approximations. So here's the first one. So it's y equals, the quadratic equals 0. Not a fan of this setup. I would rather it just be that. But that's what we have. That's what we're working with. You'll notice that your a value is 7, your b value is 24, and your c value is 9. Using the quadratic formula, always write it out because I'm going to give you a mark for it. If I don't give you a formula sheet, and if you give me the formula for a question, I'll give you a mark. If I give you the formula sheet, then maybe not. So we're going to write this out. It's going to be plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac over 2a. Also, if you write it out and say it, you're going to remember it. I promise you that. So now the next step, instead of plugging in each number and having a mess of lines to work with, let's do negative b, which is negative 24, plus or minus square root b squared. So 24 squared. Grab your calculator, do 24 squared. It's 576 minus 4 times a, which is 7, times c, which is 9. So 4 times 7 times 9. And it's going to be a positive, and a negative. So it's negative 252 over top of 14. Notice my line goes all the way across. I'm going to take marks off if you don't do that. So 556 minus 252 is going to be 324. Let's see if that gives me a nice square root. It does. It's 18. So I saved myself an extra line there. So now I've got two answers. You have to give me both answers. One of them answers is 24 plus 18 divided by 14. And the other one is going to be negative 24 minus 18 divided by 14. The first one is going to be 24 minus 18 divided by 14 is going to be 0.43. Now, they wanted it exact, so they really wanted the fraction, but I'm okay with the decimal on this. The fraction actually worked out to, I think it was 6 over 7. No, 6 over 14, which reduces to negative 3 over 7. I can handle that. That's awesome. I can also handle the decimal of that. I'm not worried about you guys in fractions at this point. Does that make sense? Over here, the other answer is going to be negative 24, take away 18, divided by 14, and we get an answer of negative 3. So your two answers in exact form are those two. Now you're going to say to me, but you said that we didn't have to get rid of the square root. Well, that would be if the square root didn't give us a nice number, okay? If it gave me a pretty ugly number, then we would have kept the square root. But if the square root is a perfect square, then we're going to get rid of it. It's just easier to work with. So let's look at the next one. How's it going to be different? I'll use a different color to keep them separate. So my a value is going to be 2. My b value is going to be 4. And my c value is now negative 7. So what am I going to get? It's going to be x equals negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over top of 2a. X is going to be negative 4 plus or minus square root 16. A is 2, C is 7, so it's 14 times 4. 14 times 4, and it was a negative times a negative, so it's plus 56 over top of 4. So 56 plus 16 is 72. I don't think that's a perfect square. Let's find out. It's not. So we don't have to change that. Our answer will be 72 over 4. Now, is that the answer that they have in the back with this question? Okay. Let's look at the next one. 4x squared minus, but we leave it like this. I suppose we could write it like this. And this. You could write it out like that, or we can just leave it like this. But because the root 72 is a decimal, it's not a nice number, this is considered exact. Otherwise, you'd have to estimate it. Okay? Now, listen, I'm not worried about exact answers in this course right now, at all. You can put all of your answers as decimals, and in fact, that would be a good idea. And then if you want to check them, just take the answers that are given in exact and put them in decimals and see if your decimals work out. So I'm not that worried about this. And I can see us getting some problems later on because there's ways of simplifying this that you don't have to do. So I'm going to tell you, I will always ask for your answers to be in decimal form. And I'm going to tell you, for any papers that you get to work on, put them in decimal form and check them with your calculator. Make sense? I'm going to pause there and take some questions from the live studio audience.